Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story Circle. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Hello, I'm Lynn Rogoff. I'm based in New York City, down in Tribeca, downtown New York, Manhattan, and I'm honored to be part of Her Story. I've been working as a filmmaker for decades in New York and Los Angeles, and also I work in the game business and the theater business. So my career has been varied in that I've gone from one medium to the other and tried to master them, which takes time. I started out in the theater business. I got my MFA in theater directing from New York University School of the Arts, but then I gravitated towards television because there was more work there, and so I started working in children's television early in my career, and then started this small company called AmeriKids, where I discovered after doing Sesame Street and Big Blue Marble that nobody really was telling the story of young people when they were young doing heroic deeds. And so I developed many stories, and ABC picked up several of them as afternoon specials. And then when ABC got sold, the rights reverted back to me. So I decided then at that point to go to Los Angeles, and I was working on another project, and somebody approached me, why don't I write for them for Fox Children's Television? They had picked up Carmen Sandiego. I had no idea what Carmen Sandiego was. I went to the mall and I discovered that Carmen Sandiego was a series of games, and that I could develop a game series from all the material that I had developed over the years. So I went back to school at UCLA and studied game design and the games business. And then I developed a prototype for one of the games, and we won a grant from Oracle Corporation to do the prototype. And one thing led to another, and then we were picked up by McGraw-Hill to launch their new division called McGraw-Hill Home Interactive. And so our game was called Pony Express Rider, and it was the keystone game to launch their new division. And they put $10 million into this, $1.5 million, and then they were supposed to put another $1.5 million into the marketing of it. But then they decided they didn't really want to be in the game business. At that time, what they called the edutainment business was very questionable because, as you know, games have evolved as violent uh, medium, and we were not interested in doing violence. So I went back to the drawing board, and this particular project that I'm now doing, I had developed originally as a screenplay, Bird Woman, Sacajawea, and we had tried to do it as a game, and we were going to do it as a second game with McGraw-Hill, but then I went back and decided to revisit the material. At that time, nobody really was interested in female protagonists, and especially Native American female protagonists. But the Lewis and Clark bicentennial, which is celebrating 200 years of this expedition that took America from sea to sea, from the Atlantic to the Pacific. And this Native American young woman who was 16 at the time and pregnant with her husband's baby. Her husband was 40 years old and a French fur trapper. And so she was invited to participate in this expedition because she, in fact, had been uh, stolen from her tribe in the Rocky Mountains, brought east, and was living in the east in a tribe called the Mandan tribe. And so she knew the language and she knew the way. And so they took her on the expedition. And in fact, she found her brother on the mountaintop, and he had become the chief, which was a tremendous surprise. And even the Lewis and Clark said it was amazing that she had found her brother. It was like finding a needle in a haystack. And she went all the way to the Pacific and back, and I tell the entire story. And so we had met with the elders there, and during the celebration of the bicentennial, the Mandan elders, and we decided to try to develop it. And then we were going to do it as a documentary. We couldn't get the money for the documentary, and so I decided that I would put the whole thing away again. So then, when podcasting came in fashion as a medium and audio drama came up as a possible genre, I decided to develop the whole project as an audio drama. And at the same time, the Me Too movement had come about. And so I said, well, maybe now they'll be interested in female protagonists. So we developed the whole project as an audio drama, and this was all during COVID. So we had to do the whole project remotely, and the actors had to upload their dialogue remotely, and we had to rehearse remotely, and we edited remotely. And then AI suddenly became available to filmmakers. And so I decided to investigate doing it as a film, but going back to filmmaking and doing it as an AI animated film. And we spent a year and a half, almost 2 years, developing it as a film. And then luckily we got distribution. We won 12 filmmaking awards. And now we're being accepted by Amazon Prime and Tubi. We're waiting for the final confirmation. So it's been a long trip and not an easy one. And I often say that I've been on the bleeding edge. My career has been really trying to be an independent filmmaker and to be a pioneer. I was often interested in the concept of trying a new medium early, like games or audio drama or AI, because you get a chance, if you're early, to make a mark. Once it's mature, then the A-listers move in and you can't get your work done.
Wow, Lynn, thank you so much for coming online and inspiring us with this incredible story. You know, when I started looking at your bio and cyber stalking you online and just seeing this amazing game you're playing with how you're living your life as a digital storyteller, it's a real honor to meet you in person as
Well,
somebody who's
thank
kind
you.
of on that path myself to try and go into the digital storytelling world.
Right.
So thank you for being such an inspiration.
Well, you
I've
have a
got
great idea here to feature women and feature their stories because we really don't get a chance to tell our stories very often. And
it's
even today
true.
in 2025, very few women's stories are really getting the kind of attention that
Mhm.
they need. They're often being put in as a second rate stories.
Yeah, it's true. So, what was the inspiration behind AmeriKids Productions, and how has it evolved over the years?
Well, I was working in uh, children's television, as I said,
Hmm.
and we were developing comedy of all things
Okay.
for this international. Started trying to think up of all these different comedy segments, and we came
Right.
up with this idea of let's do history, comedic versions of history. And so we started thinking about funny events that happened in history, and it just dawned on me that um, kids in history are never told. You're always being told the story of an adult, like
Yeah.
who did a great deed. But many young people have done heroic deeds when they were young, and it's never told. So I did a deep dive into that and discovered all these wonderful stories that go back hundreds of years. And the thing about it being young is years ago, 100 years ago, when you were 16, you were an adult. You
Yes.
weren't. There was no such thing as a teenager. This was a modern concept from the 20th century,
Yeah.
and because you would be dead by the time you were 40, 45. So
Yeah.
16 was midway between your birth and your death. So
Wow. That's
many of these young
interesting.
people did heroic deeds. And now we look at them as very young, but at the
Yeah.
time they thought of themselves as adults.
I love it. Now, your work spans multiple storytelling mediums from film, theater, and interactive media. How do you decide which medium best suits a particular story?
That's a really good question. We did a. I won a grant from the Writers Guild to write an original screenplay,
Wow.
and I had originally just was going to do a film screenplay, and then I found this material about this woman, Emma Goldman, and I was very intrigued by her story, and so spent years developing it, and then when I found her love letters, that her lover had family had donated to a library here in America in Illinois, and I read the love letters. I decided, wow, these love letters are a masterpiece, and they needed to be told. And the best medium to tell a love story with love letters is in theater. So I went back to the theater. So oftentimes you pick the medium based on the material. That's,
I
and
see.
that's so, and often the opportunity, we had, so for example, the game business, like I said, came about because I had originally developed this series as a television series, but could not get it to go anywhere.
Yeah.
But because gaming at that time, or what we called edutainment at that time, was an
Yes.
emerging field, and companies like McGraw-Hill were putting they put $10 million to start a new division. So we had an opportunity to get the money based on
Right.
on the material. And so oftentimes you go where the money is.
That's true. That's true.
Right. So
Wow.
I'm I respect every medium, and I studied theater, and I studied film and television, and I studied game. Each one of those mediums has a language and a methodology that you have to respect. You
Yeah.
can't say, "Oh, I'm a writer, therefore or I'm a director, I could do any medium." Every medium has a different way of telling a story, and
Yes.
you have to master it.
Oh, I love it. Now, you've created works like Bird Woman, and I want to say this word wrong. Is it Sacajawea?
You got it
And
right.
no,
Yeah.
and no maps on my tabs. What drew you to these historical and cultural narratives?
Well, I've always been interested in the unheralded story. I
Mhm.
think that, first of all, history is a tremendous venue to find great stories. You could
Yeah.
go back to the Bible, I mean, the great stories there. And so it goes back thousands of years that we've been telling stories from history.
Yes.
So I've always found that the real life stories have a power that imagined stories don't, because people are naturally curious about history, I think.
Yes.
And so I've always been attracted to the story of the unheralded person or the unheralded culture, or the African American tap dancer. We did that when we did that film. It was shocking. Nobody had seen tap dancing since the 40s. The
Oh,
tap
wow.
dancing had died because, like the tap dancers say, rock and roll killed tap dancing.
Dancing.
So
Yes.
they were men from an era when the big band era. They came up during the Black Vaudeville and the big band era, and they had been forgotten. And when we made the film and we launched it, it became a major classic. And it's
Wow.
still shown now today on TV. You can watch it on Canopy or Mumby or Tubi or on Amazon. It's still, decades later, people still love it. And I think it's because it's very heartfelt. The men, they were I always called them the three wise men. They really
Mm,
taught me at a very young age. I was a very young filmmaker at that time, about the struggle to be an artist, and
yes.
what they had to go through to keep their art alive, with all the discrimination they were facing and all the financial uh, struggles that they went through, and to keep an art form like that alive when everything
And
around them was telling them, you're the past, you're useless. And these guys went on, after we made that film, to be win Tony Awards on Broadway.
oh,
So
wow.
I was very proud of that, what we did there. That was uh, a major milestone in my life, and I got to know some very special people.
That is
Uh,
just awesome. Now, as a filmmaker and creator, what challenges have you faced in the industry and how have you navigated these challenges?
it's a hard. It's very challenging. First
Yeah.
of all, to be a woman. When I graduated from theater school, I got my MFA. I was just thinking about this the other day when I interviewed to go to get my master's degree in theater directing.
Mhm.
The interviewer said, "Well, why would a woman want to be study theater directing?" And, and that's how they couldn't understand it.
Yeah.
And I had come from I went to Berkeley and was doing street theater. And that's how I got interested in theater. And we were writing plays and going out on the street when I was a kid and performing them. And so when got my teacher's credentials in California, I started directing the high school students to do street theater. And then I
Okay.
realized I didn't really want to be a teacher. I wanted to be a director. So it came to me very naturally. I
Okay.
didn't think of it, oh, is this, I've got to, make a mark as a female. It was just, but everybody saw it that way. And when I got my master's, I was the only woman in my class.
Wow.
And and then, we had a hard time getting jobs in the theater, but film at that time, television mostly was more open, especially children's television is
Right.
open to new young people.
Wow.
So that's how come I ended up that way. But even with all those grants and awards and opportunities, I still couldn't get my work done. It's been
Mm.
I've had to put projects away for decades, and this last the this last project I started in 1997, and now it's 2025, right? So
Wow.
it's 30 years, right?
Yeah.
Um, so there's an old saying: you got to be at the right place at the right time with the right
Mm.
project, and if it's not the time, there's nothing that you could do. If it's not the right
Absolutely.
time for the project.
Um, So your work often highlights diverse and underrepresented voices. Why is this important to you? And what impact do you hope your stories have?
Well, I grew up. My grandparents were my great grandparents were Holocaust, died in the Holocaust, and so I grew up hearing these stories, and was always knew that there was a scapegoat just around. You were the scapegoat. You could be the scapegoat at any minute.
Yeah.
And and that's been true for many different cultures that they've been scapegoated and blamed, and it's still going on to this day.
Mhm.
And so I've always been attracted to that story. I think that becoming this hero's journey of coming out of struggle and surviving and not only surviving but flourishing is a
Yeah.
tremendous story for anybody to watch and see and be inspired by. I think it's a very inspirational journey, and Sacajawea had the same journey. She's the classic hero's journey. Went from being an enslaved Native American girl to being. She's on the money now. She's on the American coin.
Wow.
She's still being heralded to this day. So
Good.
I was curious, how did that happen? How did a young girl who was uh, enslaved by another tribe and then by a, a very nefarious husband end up becoming such a hero to not only major cultures, in America and
Yeah.
worldwide. I mean, she's been in the Night of the Museum series trilogy, so people know her around the world. And
Yes.
how did that happen? So I was curious. How did the young unknown girl? There's no picture of her. There's no painting of her. Um, how did that?
Wow.
How did she survive and become an iconoclastic? There's more statues of her in America than any other woman.
That's just incredible. Very
So,
exciting too. Now, how do you approach weaving historical accuracy with creative storytelling in your projects?
well, there's an old saying in the theater business that drama is conflict.
Mm,
You can't have drama without conflict.
yes.
So you've got to the major story has to have conflict in it. And if it requires in moving time around, pushing events closer together or inventing scenes that maybe happened or maybe did not happen. Who knows what happened between two lovers? You could never really tell. I mean, I
Yeah.
had the love letters. I could imagine what happened between them, but you have to imagine. I mean, you can't, if you're a storyteller, you have to imagine. You can't really know what exactly happened on the expedition when she was
Yes.
alone with all these expeditioners. Well, she was the only young female girl with a baby. She had a newborn that she carried with her on her back for 2 years. So you have to
Wow.
imagine all this stuff. There's no
Yeah.
there's no record of it. What actually happened as they walked or as they were in the boats or on the horses. You have to imagine these things. So you have to take a leap of imagination.
Yeah.
You could use the storylines that you discover, but at some point you have to put them down and say, okay, where's the drama here?
Wow. Now, what role do you think storytelling plays in shaping social consciousness and history?
Yeah, that's another good question. It really depends on your audience. So there are people who are very drawn to history projects and are moved by them. And there are
Yes.
other people that only want zombie stories and they only want science fiction. And, you really can't make every audience happy.
Yeah.
But if you're if you're a good storyteller, if you're very enmeshed in the characters and you've created good characters and you created a great story, then I think, people are going to be drawn to the material.
Yeah.
So I think that at the end of the
Right.
day, you have to find great characters and you have to find great relationships and you have to find a great medium to tell that in. That's at the end of the day, it really depends on the audience whether they're going to be interested in your particular venue. You don't know, you don't, it's the luck of the draw.
Yeah. Yeah. That's quite fascinating. Now, you've been involved in interactive media, as we said before, including interactive storytelling. How do you see technology shaping the future of storytelling, especially now with the advent of AI?
Well, we just got a grant from my university. I'm a professor at New York Institute of Technology, and I
Okay.
got a grant to do chatbots for the characters that we made in Bird Woman. So you could go on my website and you can ask the characters any question you want, and they
Oh, are
will
you
talk to you.
serious?
They will talk to you in the first person as if they came back from 200 years ago to talk to you
Oh,
in the
wow.
present tense. And so we've been developing these chatbots, and we've been testing them in schools and museums and libraries, and it's been a lot of fun. So to see what character people choose to ask question of and what questions do they
Yeah.
ask them. So it's
So
really
is this
fun.
on this
Yes, so on
this
the
website?
Amerikids website, you could go there
Okay.
and ask any question you, and it's funny because I ask people, well, why did you ask this character a question? So her husband, his name is Charbonneau, and he's the villain in the story. And they
Right.
often want to ask the villain questions, why are you
Oh,
beating Sacajawea up? And
that
then
is
they want to,
incredible.
and then, so this idea of interactivity has been
Yes.
around since the 90s. I mean, when we got the grant from Oracle Corporation, they were sure that interactive television was just around the corner. And this
Right.
was in 1994. And so
Okay.
they gave us a grant to do this prototype. Well, here it is to 2025. We're close to interactivity. And I
Yeah.
think these AI chatbots will be very, very potent forms of interactivity. I think the idea of the internet and the television are merging. So, whether you're um, when you're watching smart TVs, you're really watching the internet.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
Good.
television and the internet are merging into one medium.
Right. This is fascinating. Now I'm going to end my interview with two questions, which are a bit of a thought experiment. In the one, I'm going to teleport you back. And we're going to go and have a conversation with the younger you. This young woman who decided to be a storyteller, decided to change the world through the power of stories. Just in case there's an aspiring filmmaker or a writer who's listening to this interview right now and is looking to create some impactful stories, if you could go back and give yourself 3 nuggets of wisdom based on what life has taught you up until this point, what would those 3 nuggets of wisdom be?
It there's a maturation process that goes on when we're young women. We want, romance, and we want children, and we want uh, security, and we want career. Always wanted a career, and so you're always got a conflict between. For me, there was a conflict between whether I could have a career and have a traditional marriage, and I was really, and have children. All of that is comes up at the same time, and the way that we're created is, if you want to have children, you got to have them when you're young. And so you have to realize that you're going to have to make choices, and um, you have to live with the choices that you made, and you have to be mature enough to accept that you can't have it all. And even though everybody claims you can have it all, but it's very, very hard. Very few people have it all. And I think that having an independent career is also very hard. And if you want it, you have to be prepared to uh, not have things go your way right away. That's a very hard lesson. But you have to have self confidence that you're going to surround yourself with good people that support you. That's very important. I found that having the people that believed in me was very, very important to developing a career and a voice, because you have to learn what is it that you have to say, what is your voice, what is it that you want to say, and how do you say it. So all those things I did when I was young, but I struggled with all of that. That was very hard to um, come to terms with all the choices that I had to make. And you sometimes you want things to be easier, but they're not that easy. You're always faced with handling life's what life feeds you. When you're trying to have a career and a personal life. So I would say that it's very, very important to get a good education and to master whatever you're doing and take the time and the years to get mastery.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Last question is futuristic. I'm going to teleport you into the future now. And we are going to go and sit with the 90-year-old you.
Oh gosh,
She
God
is
is
sitting in her
willing.
rocking chair. Maybe she's on the dance floor. With science and technology, you'll probably live until you're 100 at the rate you're going. But if I could take you into the future to go and have a conversation with this wise woman who has led you up until this point, what will you say to her when you finally meet her? And I love asking women this question because a lot of women don't realize that the wise woman is already in them, that she's that quiet voice that says, say yes, say no, go left, go right. But we look outside of ourselves for answers and solutions all the time. What will you say to your wise woman when you finally meet her?
Well, I think you're always struggling with how am I going to get the next project off the ground? And right now we're trying to get the next episode of Birdwoman produced. So I've always feel like I'm in a struggle to get the next project done. And you don't know whether it's going to happen or whether you're going to uh, have to fold and say this is it, or how long is it going to take. So that struggle of enjoying the journey versus being there is something that I think a wise woman sees, that it's all about the journey and it's not about the results, but it's about enjoying the journey, enjoying whatever you're doing. And hopefully, I get to enjoy doing what I'm doing in the next few decades and not be sick. That is the most important thing, is that you keep your health and you pay attention to your health. Because if you're sick, you can't do anything. And so health
Oh,
is the most important. I would tell everybody to keep make sure that you eat well and you sleep well and you have good people around you and loving people around you.
Lynn, I could talk to you forever. This is a passion subject for me. I thank you so much for responding to my query and coming online and sharing your inspiration with us today.
Well, I hope that I gave some good insights for you and your audiences. And
Yeah, you
people can feel
certainly
free to
did.
reach me through AmeriKids and subscribe and watch the movie. And it's on Family Time TV. You could download the app on your phone, on your smart TV, and subscribe to us on AmeriKids, and we could stay in touch.
I definitely am going to do that. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who tuned in today. The Her Story Circle is not just a podcast. We are a social impact movement that brings you the stories and voices of women from all over the world. We share our stories to uplift you, to energize you, to inspire you, but most importantly, to empower you with people, with knowledge, with tools to take you from where you are now to where you're trying to go. So if you are a young filmmaker out there, a storyteller who's never plucked up the courage to do anything, now you have the resources. Reach out to Lynn. She's here to support you. Go back to college if you have to. I went back to college when I was 37 to be a filmmaker. And as women, we can keep reinventing ourselves way after your children are grown up. Don't give up on your dreams. Thank you, Lynn. And
all right. Well, thank you.
Bye for now, everybody. Lynn, don't go away. Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making her story.